Thank you all. I'm so excited to welcome James Tapscott. You're currently in Perth, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, back in Australia. We're sorry that James can't be with us in person, but just so excited that you were able to take the time and meet with us on what is a very different time zone than what we're experiencing here in Colorado. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you. This exhibition, I was hoping maybe we could just start with you sharing a little bit about the exhibition and how it relates to the different bodies of work that are included here, including but not limited to your installation at Green Mountain Falls.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the two kind of sides of the work you're seeing right now in the room kind of represent the whole of my practice in a way. I mean, the photos on the wall are all of my work Arc Zero, which has become sort of my seminal piece that's I've been installing in various parts of the world since about 2017. And represents this sort of like site-driven aspect of my work, which I've been doing since about 2007, designing these different kinds of installations that are quite often set up for a shorter period of time and installed in quite diverse locations. And documented to see how they respond to the site and how the site kind of works with the artwork to produce this kind of experiential piece. And then the other photography, I think what would be on the wall that you're all looking at, the
Yeah, I
circular
say one of
piece.
which is right behind James.
Right behind me? Okay, yep.
And to your right, along the
And
window.
on the windows, which look great from here, although they're a bit washed out with the light, but I'd love to see them. Yeah. And so that's sort of more of a sort of studio driven and research based part of my practice. And those images in particular began on a project I started in Boulder and the Denver area in 2018, I think it was. I was doing a residency through BMOCA and Swoon Art House. Which was just sort of a research residency. And while I was there, I ended up visiting the NSIICF, I think it's called. It's the storage facility just outside Denver where they store all of the core samples of ice that they drill and extract from Antarctica and other parts of the world. And they sort of study these slivers of core samples that have these ice crystals, which is what you can see in the images, and use these cross-polarizing filters to bring out color of the facets of the crystals. And they can really figure out a hell of a lot of information about the sort of physical properties of what's happening about 4 kilometers, so about 3 miles below the surface of the ice, which represents about 400,000 years in the past. And they use that sort of information just to figure out things like glacial melting and ice cap melting rates, and also what other sort of gases and other properties might have been there at the time. It's absolutely fascinating. And I spent a couple of days in this facility that was something like minus 30 or 40 degrees. Just the sort of place where you end up with a mustache made of ice after about 5 minutes of being in the environment. So we're in there taking photos of this stuff. And then I continued on that research at a similar facility in Australia, in Tasmania, to produce these images. So it's really cool to be able to bring them back to Colorado in particular. This is the first time any of them have actually been exhibited. Yeah, and there's sort of a joint exhibition happening at the Dairy Art Centre in Boulder at the moment with other versions of this work. Yeah, and I do this sort of like research-driven photographic works and just a lot of experiments like that in my studio and other places that sort of informs and vice versa with the installation work that I do on site. So that's kind of what you're sitting between in terms of my practice.
Thank you, James. Something I don't know the answer to that we have not had the opportunity to discuss, but how did you connect into that National Science Foundation Ice Core facility? How did that relationship happen?
I honestly just kind of stumbled across it. I'd been in Boulder for a few weeks already and had visited Colorado University, talking to professors and visiting their labs and seeing the sort of stuff they do, because they've just got amazing sort of atmospheric and environmental research programs going on there, probably the best in the world. Yeah, and I was just looking for other opportunities to see what was going on in the area and just came across it. And it was pretty funny actually, because I think the facility get a lot of like school tour groups coming through. They're generally not open to the public, but they'll take a lot of, sort of high school and earlier school groups to just come through and have a look at what they do. And I think the scientists there, they sort of get a bit tired of visitors just coming and looking at stuff. And they saw me arrive and they were like, oh, who's this guy? Another artist. Okay. And then by the end of the first day, we got on really well, and they could see that I was sort of taking it really seriously and had a proper camera and everything like that. And they were just like, oh, when are you coming back? You want to come back tomorrow? You can come back the next day if you want. We'll open it all up and you can come and see the rest of it. And so, yeah, we actually have kept in touch on and off since then. So it became quite a cool experience, actually.
Is it fair to say that your curiosity about the ice core facility is an extension of what feels like a dedicated interest in and commitment to experiencing the natural world in various ways?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always kind of interested in, seeing things in a lot of detail, and trying to find a different way of understanding what's sort of going on around us, basically. And then that kind of feeds into the design of my installation work as well, trying to create a piece that sort of opens up what's present on site for people to see in a way that they might not be able to see otherwise, basically. And I think just, the experience of working with the ice core samples was kind of like that. I mean, I've never really seen ice in that way before. Really quite fascinating. Yeah.
And not only you, but am I incorrect when I say that nobody's ever seen these ice core samples presented and documented in this way?
Yeah, not really. I mean, they do take photos like this because they use them to document the samples, but they don't exactly publicize them or turn them into a public display kind of thing. And I guess the aesthetic of the imagery, like if you've had a look at sort of microscopic like crystal photography and things like that, it's not completely uncommon or anything, but I guess most of us don't really do that in our spare time. And it became like a really difficult thing for me to figure out what to do with these as well, because I mean, it's why it took a few years. Also, COVID happened and just slowed everything down. But I just ended up after a few days with hundreds of these incredible images that I'd never sort of seen anything like it before myself as well. And trying to figure out what to do with them as an artist is kind of difficult when you have this material that's just so incredible already. It's like, well, where do I come in? And what do I do with them? And after a while, I sort of decided to not really do much at all because it didn't need it, and started kind of experimenting with different ways of just presenting it differently as well, and trying to involve light in a way, and try to recreate the experience that I had when I saw them. So I mean, you'll see on the windows just to your right as well, and in the show in Boulder, because there's backlit sort of light boxes there, and so the idea was just to try and create that luminosity of color as well that you sort of experience in the lab. And I figured that was enough. And I tend to have that approach in a lot of ways with nature, this sort of less is more kind of thing, and just be faithful to what's really there.
So the last thing I'll ask you, and then if anyone here has any questions, I will stop talking. But in thinking about less is more and thinking about drawing attention to things that are most often unseen or unappreciated, or could you extend that philosophy toward and talk a little bit about the Arc Zero series and how that less is more, and being able to elevate focus on something that maybe we don't always notice shows up in that work?
Yeah, I mean, over the years of working on site and developing these installations, I sort of kept evolving the materiality of the work just to become softer and softer, basically, in a way. Started off with this, my first piece kind of tried to stand sort of defiantly against whatever elements were there. It was just sort of an experiment. It worked okay, but it kind of taught me what not to do as well. And so it would get moved in the wind, and the shape of it was just like this big, tall, it was called the totem, and it was just a big cylindrical light, and really minimal. And
Which
so,
you can see an image of in the gallery guide as well.
oh yeah, that's right, yeah. So it didn't take much of a breeze to sort of dent one side of it because it was made of a fabric, and then it just didn't look right. So I sort of learned from that basically to just use wind instead of try and fight against it. And so the next piece I did was made of fiber optic cables that would sort of flow in the wind, so you could sort of see and chart the wind currents as sort of like light moving against the darkness. And it gradually evolved from there to the point where about 10 years later, I just started working with mist, because it was about the softest thing I could really think of that was still visible, but still kind of, I don't know, I think something about an artwork having a real presence in the site as well, led me to producing a big circle to sort of structure the work around. And so, yeah, the mist became a perfect way to basically just express everything that was happening on site, and also sort of elevated the experience to be more than just a visual one as well, because it's such a multi-sensory thing. Yeah, I mean, you can sort of feel it on your skin, and you can smell it in the air and sort of taste it as well, and makes this wonderful sort of white noise hissing sound. So it became like such a much more immersive experience, that's completely defined by the site phenomena as well.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have a question or anything you'd like to note? Yes.
Okay. Our question is, several of us were looking at your Arc Zero Eclipse, the one with the black background, and we can see the arc and then the reflection, but then the horizontal lines coming out of there that are kind of yellow, orange. Where did those lines come from?
In those images, it's actually the surface of the lake itself. That particular piece was installed in a salt lake, which it was only about 3 or 4 inches deep. And so it has this kind of white, slightly pink crust of salt. And so the light that protrudes from the sides of the ring basically illuminates that horizon of land just either side of it and picks up in the photograph. Yeah, which is kind of a nice way to give it this sort of a sense of the site rather than just be a abstract circle.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
We were at Greenbox Art Festival and really appreciated your
Cool.
Nevis. Yes, it's beautiful up there.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a great site for it. One of the best that I found to do it in. It's kind of unique there in a way that you can actually walk through the ring out to the island and also the whole way around the island. And even the first time that I sort of did that after it was installed, I spent the evening just taking photos of it to document it, and just kept doing these laps around the lake and stopping like every 10 paces and taking another photo. Because the dynamic of the shape of the ring, depending on the angle you're looking at it from, and its relationship to the gazebo and the shore and everything, just completely changes and creates this really interesting dialogue throughout the whole site. So yeah, it's a really nice place for it. And also having the backdrop of the mountains from every angle, basically creating a nice darker backdrop than the sky, makes the mist really stand out against it. So you can sort of watch it move and dance around in the wind a lot better than most other sites that's ever been installed. So yeah, it's quite a special one.
Ask how the greenbacks piece originated.
Did you hear that, James? How did the green box piece originate?
Quite serendipitously, actually. I was in Denver for a public art conference about 2 years ago, and I was just trying to, have an opportunity to go hiking. I was on my way to Breckenridge for just a couple of days, just to make the trip a little more worthwhile. And I saw that there was a town called Green Mountain Falls that had a lake with a gazebo on it and an arts program. And I thought, oh, that might be a good spot to see if we can install a piece at some point. And so I just emailed them, and turns out the director, Scott Levi, was just in town that day when I was driving through. So I swung by and just had a chat with him about it, and went for a little walk, and it just kind of clicked. And then about a year later, we started planning on doing it. So yeah, it all just kind of came together like that.
Incredible. Again, thank you. But thank you so much to James for your generosity in sharing this work with us. And please, if you haven't seen the installation in Green Mountain Falls, go. Sean, were you going to say something?
Is there more information of other kinds of work that
There are. If you haven't had the opportunity, please pick up a gallery guide on the counter. It does have some images of earlier work. Check out the piece in Green Mountain Falls. If you are up in the Boulder area or want to make the trek, there's work on view at the Dairy Center and for another month, maybe about as long as this show's here. Is it kind
I
of?
think they close on the same day, actually.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
about September 21st, if you feel like making a James Tapscott tour of Colorado, there are 3 stops along the way, and you've been here. So yeah, any closing thoughts, James, before we let you get back to your morning?
Yeah, no, just thanks for coming and seeing my work. And yeah, if you've already been to Greenbox, thanks for that. It's a really good install. Yeah, a pretty unique and rare opportunity to see like so many examples of my work on the other side of the world from where I am. So yeah, if you get a chance to go and see everything, yeah, please do. And hit me up on Instagram or whatever if you have any comments or other questions. Just let me know. Yeah, and if you are going to Greenbox, try and go there in the evening, just as sort of sun setting as well, and so you can get to experience the artwork as a nighttime piece as well as a daytime piece. It's really special that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, James.